of 8.8, closed at 8.2, and dividend yield is at 2.4%. Now, as already mentioned, we're talking about Oando on the program today. Now, the late filing of the year-end 2014 results by the company continues to attract reactions, mostly negative. The company posted after-tax losses of 183.9 billion naira. Now, in some quarters, there is a perception of regulatory slackness. Let's get more perspectives on this with Tinuade Awe. She's the head legal and regulation at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for coming in. So, that's been like in the news for a very long time. It literally broke the social media over the weekend when the results were announced. Let's talk about the rules. What does the rule book say with regards turning in earnings?
Okay, so there are rules around disclosure of your earnings, and what it is that where you have your audited financials, you have a 90-day period to submit your audited financials to the exchange, from where they will be released to the market. So in the case of Oando, the year end was the 31st of December, and therefore the audited financials should have been submitted by the 31st of March. You will recall, however, that the exchange gave all listed companies 1 month from their year end additional to take care of the fact that there had been general elections and, you know, there were a number of holidays. So that deadline was extended from the 31st of March to the 1st of April.
So what did...
Sorry, to the 30th of April.
30th of April.
Yes.
So given that 1 month extension, it would have been expected that Oando should turn in their result as at that time, because it's a given. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has sanctions that will be meted out to companies who do not fulfill this obligation. So what did your department do, seeing that the expected, date for this result to be turned in passed without it coming in?
Okay, so what we do is our engagement with our listed companies is very robust, and it starts before the results are due, because we know that our listed companies are not in the business of being listed on the exchange. They're in the business of whatever business they are set up by their shareholders to do. So what we do is we send reminders to them before their accounts are due, and we sent a reminder this year. And then after their accounts are due, we engage with them. We send reminders, we ask questions, and the engagement takes both formal and informal channels with the company in order to understand what is happening. In the case of Oando, we did engage formally, and then we also engaged informally. And specifically in October, we engaged with Oando to ensure that they would come to the floor of the exchange to come and explain to the floor why their accounts were delayed.
But sorry to cut you here. Why did it have to take that long for this to happen? Because it seems as if I think that's where, the regulatory slackness was now highlighted, because it had to take this long for the regulator to come up and say, this is what's going on, because there was a massive negative reaction when the result eventually came out.
Okay, you have to understand that the exchange was not aware of the losses, that there would be losses in Oando. And so we're an exchange, we're a marketplace, and our engagement is both carrot and stick. Our engagement is proactive, and so we would do the formal engagement, which is formal letters that say what is happening. We will call the individuals within the compliance function to say what is happening. It's not slack, it's a back and forth. It's a, what is happening, explain to us, why your account's not coming. But a company need not tell us and may not tell us, look, there is a massive loss going to happen. And that's why we're late. And indeed, in this case, there was no indication to us that there was this massive loss going to occur.
So now what does the NSE intend to do?
Well, the NSE is doing a number of things. First of all, you have to remember that immediately in May, when the accounts were not released, the Oando was put on the NSE X-compliance list, which is a report on our website, which is an investor protection initiative, and tagged as below listing standard. And the reason why it was below listing standard was also put there. Then we continued the engagement. Now that the accounts have been released, there has been a facts behind the figures. As you know, there was a discussion with the floor, then there was a facts behind the figures, and then there was an analyst call. Internally, we're looking at our engagement to this point. Was there anything that was wrong with our engagement in order to strengthen for the future? That's the first thing that we're doing. We're also looking, certainly we find Oando, because there are certain fines that go with when you haven't submitted your account, so those fines, and there's a due date for the payment of those fines, which we expect to receive. Also, one of the implications of not submitting your accounts on time is just as you have to do with any other regulator, you have to provide that information in your annual report, and that you have to, our ex-compliance report figures would, ex-compliant report information will also indicate that you've been fined, and that will be there for 3 years. So there are certain sanctions, but internally, every time that we have an event, we go through and we ask ourselves, could our engagement be more robust? Indeed, you may recall that at the beginning of this year, around about February, we commenced a draft rule that is related to default filings. And the idea was, we did a gap analysis of what exists in other countries, in other jurisdictions, other stock exchanges, and what exists here. And the aim of that rule, which is still in draft form, is to deal with situations like this. Some of the things that you will see once that rule comes into effect is that companies that are in default will have to publish a press release. That press release will deal with 3 things. 1, it will say we're in default. 2, it will say the reason why we're in default. 3, it will say anticipated time for production of the accounts. So that the investor, so it's something that follows from all the other things that we're doing. So the stock exchange is not asleep. I think the accusations of regulatory slackness are unfounded in this case, given the engagement, given the state of our rules, and given all what we've been doing around this company and other companies.
No, before, prior to this conversation now, I don't think there was so much information with regards to what the NSA had actually been doing with regards to Oando's results. So it's a good thing that we're getting this clarification, because a lot of companies, we've got a lot of companies listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and they'll be thinking that, it means that it's a free day for everybody. We can go ahead and do what we want to do. But then, are there similar cases like what was recorded with Oando, still happening at the moment?
Okay, I think I need to clarify what you mean by similar cases. Do you mean similar cases of loss, or do you mean...
No, similar cases of companies not turning in their full year results as at when due. Okay.
We have a number of cases where there are companies that have not turned in their results when they're due. And that was one of the reasons why we took a step back and we started this rulemaking process, which I described, that started in February, because we thought, okay, we feel that we have a very robust engagement. We know that the engagement we have is robust, but is there anything that we can add on to it? So there are a number of companies, as I said, we have seen an increase in the number of companies due to the formal and informal engagement that we do that submit accounts. But certainly, as with any market, we do have some companies that are in default. We're working with those companies because we believe that shareholders have a right to have information. There are 3 measures that we can take when a company is in default. 2 of them we took with Oando. 1 is with the below listing standard. The second is with the fines. The third and the ultimate one is obviously delisting. It's a very, very critical decision to delist a company, because remember that when you delist a company, what you're doing is you're taking it outside of the regulatory ambit of the exchange. And while we have made our delisting procedures and rules more robust, we're still conscious of the fact that the entity steps out of our regulatory purview, and then it is up to investors to deal with that company without the protection of a market that the exchange provides. So it's a very, very critical decision that is only taken at the highest levels of governance at the exchange, being the council.
Ms. Awe, I definitely will not let you go without you commenting on this. What lessons has the exchange learned from this?
Well, we've learned a lot of lessons. I think one of the things is that we have to be more open, about regulatory activity, because one of the things that you said is you were not aware of some of the things that the exchange is doing. I think it's a fine balance, though, in the sense that as a regulator, it is not your role, or we do not view it as the role of the exchange, especially the regulatory section of the exchange, to constantly be in the media. That's not, because people start asking, are you business development? Why are you in the media? Are you marketing all the time? But a fine balance around letting the investing public know what the regulatory initiatives are is certainly something that I think that we've learned.
Tinu Adeawe, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. Tinu Adeawe is Head Legal and Regulation at the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Thank you very much, Harriet.
Business Morning continues in just a moment. Please stay with us.